Tonight, several folks I know, several of you were here graciously at my, although it's been a standing invitation for this whole thing, but I just want to sit back and let there be a conversation, and let that conversation be directed by Native voices, talking about just generally challenges of Native activism and the legacy of the Red Power movement. And I will just quickly summarize a sentence to our discussions on the Red Power movement. I believe that enormous amount of things, that a lot of the things that happened legislatively in the 1970s, mid to the late 70s, was as a result of the public being made aware of issues and pressuring, their politics. Means that the efforts of direct action of AIM, Indians of all nations, and the various other groups, while some people have said it was just like a flash in the pan, it very much was not, and much has a legacy on several different levels still, I think. And with that, we're gonna be kind of unstructured. Anybody that wants to speak up, speak up, and anybody that has questions, ask them.
I would kind of like to hear Amy, and let Amy tell you guys about her work with AIM and trying to establish a chapter for Tennessee and Western North Carolina. Any troubles that she's had involved with the ground, just give us a little synopsis of what's been going on with that.
Alito chimichuk ma hoki tia chata hoyo. Sia hoyo hanali eske. And it is my name is English name is Amy Clark. Very white, and felt that my dad decided to pick a book name about 2 generations ago with his son. Being that, as it said, my mother is a descendant of, based in Oklahoma. My dad is a descendant of Overhill Cherokees over here at Qualla Foundry. And so I got to Tennessee. I'm 7th or 8th generation Tennessean due to the Trail of Tears. Since 1906, but as you can tell, I've been a lot longer, being Choctaw and Cherokee. Growing up in Macon County, Tennessee, it was rough. I was too Indian to be white, and going back to Oklahoma and to Wichita, white to be Indian. So it's kind of one of those weird half-breed, mixed up American mutt stuff. And so I never really had an identity. Kind of grappled with, I read Russell Means's book, Where White Men Fear to Tread. When I was 12 years, between that book and one of my aunties, Pauline, she kept driving it in. You're an Indian. You look at your dad. You're an Indian. That was my identity. And you grow up and you kind of lose track of who you are, and you try to mainstream with modern American society, as weird colonized it is, and you just don't fit. And I worked for a contractor. I was never a marshal. I worked for a contractor that moved inmates under the Marshals United States Code 18. And I was up in, when I say Ojibwe lady was riding with us, And says I was sleeping on a bus and I had this pillow, I remember, and she asked me, she's like, hey, traditional pattern. And I looked at her, we're on a bus, so I just like, sorry, Sarge, I know you're Indian, but what kind of Indian are you? And from that point on, it kind of came back full circle. That was in 2015. In 2016, there was a alleged LiDAR scanning of Mound Bottom in Nashville. And Bottom is a Muskogee mound, and Choctaw people or Muskogee knows what the white people says. My people say we were here first, but hey, whatever. So I called up to Minnesota, spoke to a guy named Frank Paro, AIM flag to kind of get this protest going. Native American Indian Association of Tennessee didn't really want to do anything and not to throw them under the bus. He said, yeah. So he told me Dave Ortiz or a chapter up in Kentucky. And anyway, I got real connected and we were able to do some coat drives and go out to Oklahoma and relatives out there. And it was really a neat experience. But it is so difficult as far as organizing the community here in Tennessee, as well as federally recognized Native, even though I wasn't over here, even though I look just like them. It wasn't their idea first, so they don't like it. Then there's the problem of you've got the state tribes and you've got the federal tribes and you've got the descendants, and nobody wants to talk to each other, and we're all the same boat. People are suffering, but then we get together and start talking, and no, it's got to be this way, or it wasn't my idea, so we're not doing it. And there's a lot of infighting and stuff. Even in AM itself, we've got 3 factions. You've got GGC, you've got the ones who are bylaw under, which my group currently is. We are working with the Grand Governing Council, and in fact, I tried to get Dave Ortiz to come out. I'm currently on a plane to Pennsylvania, so he was like, yeah, you got it. But as the autonomous, we don't know who they are, kind of the Tom, Dick, and Harrys of the weird world. Just it's just kind of a weird way, and we kind of need allies in all corners, because you guys still exist, and you don't look like an Indian, but obviously I am. So it's kind of into the organizing thing. Actually, one of our charter members, and he's been with me since, I guess, 2017. We were mutual contacts through Luther White Eagle, who was in Oklahoma in the 70s, and he was a dear friend of Kirk and with chapters. But it's been kind of a wild ride, and wouldn't trade it for anything, but it's tough. So, you got any questions? Yeah.
What do you think AIM can bring to in Middle Tennessee or Western North Carolina?
Really, from the get-go, especially with the mound building thing, the difference between the American Indian movement and Native American Indian Association, for example, is we're not afraid to rock the boat. We're not 3C, so we don't have anything to lose as far as government placement. Afraid to just stand up and make a stand. We've been to Lights for Liberty. We've been to pretty much every protest in Tennessee since 2016. It just, we got the kind of the A game going. Not to be a violent, just we we stand. We know when things are right, and we stand up for it. Other Native American groups in the state of Tennessee, but they don't have the impact of, hey, we're here as a community, we're thriving as nations, we are all in this together, but we're still here, and we're going to be here long after you guys are gone. And so it's just tough when you've got people who are so used to, oh, sweet little Indians, they're so poor and pitiful, we did a horrible history to them here, versus we just want to be at the same table. We're tired of having scraps and crumbs and, oh, that's so cute. What, my grandmother was part Cherokee, stuff like that. It's weird. It's hard to describe. And I do see some nods of, yeah, I get that. So
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being militant. Nothing wrong with being radical, you know?
no.
Well, the idea of not being owned by anyone, and like you said, being, you know, how Valerie could weigh in on that, being a 501c3 organization, you have your certain do's and don'ts. And, you know, you don't, hey, the government doesn't recognize some of us Indians, so why they have to recognize everything that you do, and to be legitimate, you know?
Exactly. With Tennessee being a war party state, there's a law on the books that is literally, if there's more than 4 Native Americans in a group, shoot one and not get charged with it. Obviously, they don't enforce this law, and you have a Bureau of Indian Affairs office in Nashville, as well as USET and a few other places. But books, it needs to go. And it still reminds you and puts you in your place that, yeah, you're Jackson's home territory. So it's a little rough, but when it comes to ascertaining, you know, our civil rights, there's a few groups in Tennessee that would just rather be the cute, we'll teach you how to do beadwork, or we'll send you to school, but we're not going to go there. You guys can do it for us. When we organized for Indigenous peoples, and Jeff was there too, nobody from the 501c is there. But as soon as we got that legislation through, oh yeah, we're going to take credit for it. And that was the problem that I had with them. When there was some antiquities, and I think it was a Yuchi jawbone was found in a farm. They reached out like they were supposed to by the state. And they were still there on the desk, sure of it. It just, stuff like this, we fix those things, and we will continue to do so. A little motivation, but I can't let my people, we've come so far in a short amount of time, and I don't want to lose that. We've been fighting since 1492 in this hemisphere, and the few gains that we've had since 1968, I don't want to see them go away. Just in the name of, oh, they'll give us $1 if we just stay quiet. No, it don't work that way.
Well, I certainly, how many are in your group in Tennessee?
Officially, I've actually got the list right here. It's very short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, usually that's the way.
We got about 8. They're all over the state. Mostly are around Nashville, but we've got some over here in North Carolina, as well as East Tennessee. So
yeah,
we're growing. Every time I go out to a powwow or ceremony or anything, I'm always prospecting and saying, hey, why don't you come talk to me? You look interesting, stuff like that. Yeah, we'd like to grow a little bit Tennessee and maybe North Alabama as well, because technically the traditional Tennessee area was north of, but we're getting there. So I'd rather have few quality people who I know will get up and stand up and, you know, fight, be it on paper or be it physically, but as opposed to nothing.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at a regular protest, you may have 3 or 4 people show up. So at least with these 8 individuals, I know they're going to show. So
I have a question for you, Amy. In those efforts, how can we non-Indigenous supporters be helpful?
kind of stepping up. Like the one thing that's kind of grinds my gear, especially in 1980, Ned McWhorter was the governor. And he passed through legislation and at the time there was 90 schools, 90 public schools that violation of Title 10 because they had Native American mascots. And here we are in 2021, 88 of those school districts still have Native American mascots. Clearly the stereotype, never have, it's just the things like that. It's like, hey, would we want to put an Asian person, no. An African-American person as a mascot? No. Why is my community still being a mascot? What is the honor of somebody acting a fool with an Asian or a knockoff headdress representing? You know, just things like that. If your legislation, when you know that something is violating, call them out on it. It's hard. I mean, obviously I can say, oh yeah, give us money, but at the end of the day, it takes numbers. And if you know something is a violation, like Native American mascots are a violation of Title 10 and federal schools are Title 10. So Redstone Arsenal's got a huge Native American community because I'm actually an Army vet myself. And so one of the biggest school districts in Middle Tennessee is Montgomery Central, home of Fort Campbell. It's also the war mascot. So it just, it makes no sense. And it's a frustration.
We have several people present here tonight, native and non-native, who have been working on those things in the Cookeville area.
Oh yeah.
How about it, someone else tell us a little bit about your story?
I'll go.
Valerie, you're the one I would have called on.
You're looking right at me. I see it.
And
I was thinking about Amy, and I was, even for as little that you have, Amy, you have so much more than we did in Alabama. You've still got your IHS. You got this little setup. You've got this group of people. And I'm here. I'm from South Dakota, and I grew up on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And you know, when things like, you know, when Standing Rock was going on, I think the best about American Indian movement and the Red Warriors, was that's the tip of the, you know. So with it being the tip of the spear, you're in a line to, you know, be in as the responder, I guess. And everybody else is trying to push at the same. My background is, I guess was my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather is John Fire Lundy, and he was the medicine man that was assisting Russell Means and Dennis Banks and all of that, and piercing and praying over them and all that, you know. I have my grandfather who was more in line with, we just need to stay out of that. You know, it's too dangerous. We need to stay out of that. You're fast forwarding, I'm over here in Alabama, living in Alabama, and other than the porch creek, almost everything's non-existent, you know, like everybody everybody at home's getting vaccinated, just go into IHS. Well, there's no services like that here, so I can even tell the people here where they need to go. So, Indigenous Peoples Day to do here, but there's so much work that has to be done, and there's so many facets of it. There's so many facets of, that placard needs to come down. The museum needs to, take down Geronimo and put up some relevant information. These little factions that have to be handled, and it's part of a red power in the fact that you're trying to be strategic in how you charges. So when we developed AIC, our charge was responding to what the people were saying to us after Indigenous Peoples Day, that they knew absolutely nothing, and they knew they didn't know anything, and so we created the AIC as a 501c3 in order to increase Indigenous education here in Alabama. So, the bad part about that is that, again, there's nobody here, and it is hard or the 25 people that I guess consistently, not necessarily going to see them. I might get some good ideas, but I'm not necessarily going to see them. This scenario where they feel as opposed to, what, stand with me, let's do this, but again, I'm limited at this point with the 501c3. So the Red Power movement, I think, was inspiring, as I read all of the, things that were involved with it, and how, how it came about, partially part of that was as well, and knowing that all these groups of people were into different states, way away from their families, but the government had in mind that, if we move them away and assimilate them, we could take over that land too, but my family was one of them. They moved to his grandfather they created their own group and brought everybody on about ideas that would be good for that particular area and cultures and shared, and so I guess it's quite and I think that, with anything, it's just going to take a lot of work. And what can non-Indigenous people do?
So finding those allies, especially, young allies in those college places is just very convenient, and you'll definitely find those voices. The type of people you need. I love that we have this this national, different people in different places. I love that idea as well, being able to network with different people. And so being invited to Tennessee Coalition, Indigenous Coalition, I love learning new things and learning from people in different, in South Louisiana, very deep Trump nation, so besides the big cities like Baton Rouge and New Orleans, we have a lot of conflicted natives, so yeah, it's hard to be in these spaces with that kind of mindset, but they do respect me, and the reason why they're able to respect me is because they see somebody fighting when they can't. And I am national communicator for Red-Handed Warrior Society, and that was founded in Dallas, Texas, and it came out of Standing Rock. So because of that as well, I'm able to, communicate, especially for places that don't have enough Indigenous representation. So. Great job, Amy, for continuing the hard work, and everyone else.
I wonder if there's a way. I'm sure I know there is a way. I mean, I wonder if someone could find it for our purposes of some kind of an outreach for Indigenous college students across the state, because I'm sure there are a large number. Not a whole lot at Tennessee Tech, although we are hoping to change that. But that kind of energy, that the young folks carry with them could be very strong. I think that's maybe something for us all to be thinking about.
I have a question for Bailey. How do you feel about the Mardi Gras Indian tradition? I know that it's supposed to be celebrating the relationship, or I think it's supposed to be celebrating the relationship between African Americans and Native Americans. So, but it could come off as mascotish, or it could be problematic. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I have deep roots in New Orleans. My ancestors were enslaved as well. So, and I have African roots way back, And I do understand the relationship between African Americans and the Choctaw that they're impersonating kind of, or celebrating. It can be seen in different ways. I could definitely understand the appropriation of it. It's very hard. It's a very hard thing to talk about. I feel like I'm not knowledgeable enough in it, but I definitely see where it could be conflicted.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
Definitely weigh in if you can.
I actually did a program for my floor. I'm a resident assistant here at Loyola, and I did one where we made our own Mardi Gras beads because we couldn't go out and participate in Mardi Gras this year because it was canceled due to COVID. But I wanted to do a diversity aspect, and I looked into it, and many of the Mardi Gras Indians have Native descent. And I think there's this whole group of people out there that aren't talked about, which are the Afro-Indigenous people. And their outfits loosely mimic powwow regalia, and it's seen as more of a way to, like, you have to sit down and bead your entire outfit. And it's a way to get people off of the streets and away from guns. And I see it as a way that Afro-Indigenous people can express their native culture as well. And I think it's a beautiful way that the two communities people
of the people that participate in the Mardi Gras Indian thing. And I think it's quite a bit different from the mascot issue with schools. A lot of them do have Indigenous roots, and they honor that. Of course, the regalia is extravagant and over the top, but that's part of New Orleans. They're just keeping that culture alive. They're a lot like different societies. They have different little areas that are a particular tribe or of Mardi Gras Indians. So I don't really see what they do as much being much like appropriation, more like appreciation for how things evolved there. And they are very good allies. I've worked with a few in the past that have been right there on the front line. So I look at them a little bit different than I do the mascot issue, which is just way out of hand here at the moment in Tennessee. And hopefully we're going to get that taken care of. But yeah, it's one of the problems that I've seen with the Red Power movement and trying to get people involved in your area is the differences between natives. That has been a very big obstacle, it seems like, in this area, because you have the older, a lot of the older people, they don't want to be as active or doing what I call the dirty work. You know, they want to sit back, like Amy said, and the benefits of what everybody else is doing. And I'm not too cool with that. I don't like that too much. And then we have the people who say they are descendants, and well, they'll say, well, my great grandmother was Cherokee, and this is how, you know, I don't have any problem with this. That's a big issue here. Trying to make these people realize, hey, why don't you talk to some living native people and find out what's going on? It's somebody that's been removed from the culture for decades, if not centuries. So it is a rough job, and I get frustrated and disappointed at times, but we just have to stand strong and keep moving, you know, because somebody has to do it. We've lost some really strong people here in the Middle Tennessee area lately that had their hands in pretty much everything. And the younger people are going to have to step up and fill those shoes. And it's a hard task, but we have to stick with it. And I'm glad that we are now, you know, we now have the capability to do things like this, like the Zoom meetings, and seeing what natives across, you know, all of the Americas are saying. And I just love that, because for so long we've been apart from each other, and I wasn't aware of things that were going on with the, you know, the Sisista people or the Dene, things like that. We have access, and we can use that. You know, I think that the social media, reaching out to people on social media, is a good thing in some ways, and we can, you know, exploit that, use that to bring people in and allies in and help fight for our causes.
Things like this, bringing a lot of people together from, you know, cross-sectional, I think be helpful. Well, before I go on to the next thing, Sayota, you're a living native person. Give us your thoughts.
She Sayota Henshansei, and we are on this land, the Tungis. I believe that's correct. I pronounced it incorrectly. I apologize. And I want to put out there for the note, that is a fire behind me. It's real, and my ass is not on fire. It's just I had fire under my ass. Okay. We got things hot and ready here in Cookville. So, aside from all that, thank you for letting me weigh in, Troy. Thank you everybody for being here and sharing your thoughts or listening to our thoughts as Native peoples. And really, you know, just my perspective on this whole Red Power movement that's still continuing, although as anything, it kind of ebbs and flows. I think it's strong now, considering all the things with Standing Rock and other protests that have kind of been put in the forefront. It's stronger than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You know, Valerie and Amy, I'm sure, can speak on the historical patterns of that. But my perspective of the Red Power movement is kind of like the Black Power movement. And it's just the fact that we as natives have to have control of the narrative and be able to have access to resources and equality in every institutional aspect of our society. Once we look at the disparities, no matter what nation you're from, it's all the same. And when you boil that down, that pretty much is why the American Indian movement was created. to help represent each nation, kind of like the Black Power movement. No matter where the African American was, what ghetto, what rural area was, there was supposed to be representation. And then you had small chapters like the NAACP, SCC, and other things of that nature. Whereas the Native American, we've got little groups here and there, but as Amy so well put it, the American Indian movement has been really the only entity to step up and make, the ripples in the water. Ever since I read In the Spirit of Crazy Horse by Peter Matheson, and was brought to light about how the FBI even had that book banned from bookshelves, just because it spoke on the truth of what happened to the people of South Dakota, the Lakotas, and just the open, overt murders that are continuing today of Native women, that, the stealing of badlands and uranium mining and so on and so forth. And then the incident of Oglala by Robert Redford, that was even highlighting how Leonard Peltier and Robidoux and Butler and Means were all framed, if you will, for something that today, it might not even be an issue. I mean, today, for example, we had 4 cops on video murdering a Black man, but yet still they are allowed to have a jury right now picked that's, kind of probably going to be slanted in their favor. Whereas 4 Native Americans were tried and 3 were let off and 1 was convicted, still sitting in prison today as a result. There was no cameras, although the evidence was overwhelmingly proven that Peltier did not use any weapon that they said he did to kill those FBI agents. So controlling that narrative, who controlled that narrative? The FBI did. And they made sure that no natives were seen in the courtroom. No natives could be seen as people. How does that relate to what's going on in Cookeville? And there's not a Red Power movement in Cookeville, unfortunately. I'm, and a few other people here are about it. And we're trying to do our best. And I want to thank Yulia Gruber, shout out to her, and Troy for standing and by me at the school board meetings. But part of my angst about all this whole thing is that, I'm trying to bring education to the people in Putnam County about Native culture, and have been for more than 20 years. And still that's not enough. They think, as many people have said to me in the past, well, I've got so much Native blood in me, and, I don't find it offensive, like we've all said that and recognize that that's what we've been faced with. But the disingenuous thing about it is that we are natives, and we're telling them that this is, it's a racist term they're using, and it's wrong, and it needs to be changed. But they don't want us to control that narrative. And that's part of that power, that identity crisis that natives have been enduring for centuries, really. And we're even speaking English, and not a native language. So that tells you how far and deep the roots are of the change that has happened to, all of us. Although they'll let some cities be named native names still, and they're hidden, like, a lot of Florida cities have native names. Muncie, Indiana, for example, is named after Chief Muncie, supposedly, and things like that. But the reality is that nobody knows these heroes of ours. If I ask people, and children especially, if they know who Lozen is, I'm Apache, I know who she is, but nobody knows who that is, really. Some people do in the Native community, I'm sure. But this is a lady who was a hero among, the likes of Harriet Tubman. And then if I ask who's the most famous Apache, everybody hands down will say Geronimo, but they don't, know Victorio or Loco or any other leaders that we had. And that, again, that's part of that narrative. And then, of course, Geronimo gets vilified, and said all these disparaging things. And even his real name isn't really known as Gayathale. So, and when I educate the kids about how his name came to be and the history behind our real true name is Inde, and how the Apache word was used to name us because of how the cavalry would side with one native side or the other and say, hey, who are those people over there? And they would, like, for example, the tribe that was our rival would say that's the Apaches, and meaning fierce fighter. That's how our name came to be. So a lot of people think that's, and Jeff and everybody on this can relate, that even the term Cherokee is not the true name of the nation. It's the Atne Yukonot people. And when you tell these people these things and you educate them on it, or even call them out on it when they say they are this or that, I've had a confrontation with several of the Euro-Americans here about them saying they're Cherokee. I'm like, okay, cool. What band are you? And they're silent. They don't have a way of answering that.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. Okay, well, that's good. But again, it's how they're removed from society, so our societies, I should say, so much that we have a running joke. We call them pretendians, and even some real natives are pretendians because they've lost their way. They don't want to. They're colonized so much. They don't want to adhere to our old ways and ceremonies. So that red power is actually holding on to that, the ceremonial ways, not being afraid to express that or speak it, and then speaking out against injustices toward those people, to our people, no matter where, when, or how. So thank you for letting me speak, Troy.
Oh, thank you so much for being here, Sayota, and for everything that you do. Thank all of you for everything that you do. It is real, kind of a side thing, but talking about how nations' names that we know them by are not what they call themselves. We call that an autonym. I've probably told this story to some people, but the city of Des Moines, Iowa, the way that tribes would often get named is the European explorers would ask one band, who are those people over there? And so they were told, they asked, who are those people by the river? And it sounded like Des Moines, which means the monks. And they had some monks with them, so they named it that. But now we know that it actually, in that dialect, means the shitheads. Sometimes it can work in a different way. I think that all of our guests have had a chance to speak, but we still, technically, we end at 8 o'clock. So if you have to go at 8 o'clock, I stay. You can stay longer if you want. We can still have some conversation, but we may only have 10 minutes, 9 minutes to ask any more questions of some of these folks who have graced us with their presence, and for which I am so grateful.
What's the most important issue that the American Indian movement needs to work on right now?
Kind of just bridging the gap with our communities. We're still kind of in this mindset because of all our different locales and different nationalities of the 573. It's been a long day. I work for FEMA and I have to deal with numbers all day. But anyway, 573 federally recognized tribes, as well as the hundreds, if not thousands, of state recognized tribes. It's just banding those communities together. The more people we can get on the same boat, the easier the rowing is for us. And because of all the different communities that we're in and different ways of life that we're in, it's tough. Right now, that would be the biggest thing. The second biggest thing would be realizing that no matter what your skin color is, you're still going to bleed red. So at the end of the day, we're all indigenous to somewhere, whether it's this hemisphere or another hemisphere. You are indigenous somewhere, and we really do just need to bring it together, reel it in. So
some of our guests may not know Hai, although it seems like everybody knows Hai. But Hai was the co-founder of a group in the 60s, late 60s in Chicago, the Young Patriot organization that partnered with the Black Panthers in Chicago, several Native groups. And I would never, speak for Hai, but I want to throw that out there because next week, half earlier than we did tonight, Tennessee Tech is sponsoring a panel that's got a couple of Black Panthers, another member of the Young Patriots. Was it the Young Patriots organization? It was a different Young Patriots group, wasn't it?
Well, there's a Young Patriot Party and the
Young Patriot Party. And also the woman who is currently the director of the American Indian Center in Chicago. So that will be through the TTU Center Stage Facebook page. And I will post links to that in the Tennessee and Alabama pages. Anybody can listen in. I think it's going to be really interesting. But I like the idea, of what Amy just said and of what, in the crucible, High and those guys did, which is challenge the man together, using the unique abilities and skills of each group, and with each group still having its own autonomy, but cooperatively. And I just really love that idea.
Yeah, and I was going to say one of the ways that we made it work, and I don't know how it would work with your tribe, but it was called the Rainbow Coalition, and if in fact the Black Panthers or Young Lords or Native American Committee or AIM or whoever wanted our assistance, we would go with them, but we would drop being a Young Patriot and we would become one of them. Okay, so that way, and not question them in what they're doing and what they wanted to do. So it would add more, just add more power that way, but at the same time, it was unity. If a Black Panther, with the Black Panthers, we'd become a Black Panther. If it was with the Native American committee that we worked with, we'd become, one of them, but we'd never ask, them to change because of our beliefs. So therefore, we were able to really challenge the power structures that were there, which is, in the end, with COINTELPRO and the FBI destroyed us. But that's something that we would like to do. If for instance, we can ever help you from Nassau, the school here, I think that's something we could probably do in terms of, working with you, take directions from you, and not question, because you're the folks that really knows what's best for your culture. So I just want to extend our hand out there to you folks, and also have you come back and just, teach some classes, please, because, we were wanting, when we started this, we knew we had to get some Native Americans in here. It just wouldn't have been an organizing school if we didn't. And so here comes Troy, and then Troy's opened up a whole new, just fantastic, phenomenal area for us to learn. So please come back, and we'd love to be able to work with you.
Yeah, I would definitely be honored. I think Jeff just dropped off, but I think Soyota was there when we did the Indigenous People Day rally in Nashville back in 2017.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it wasn't for the homeless people, they probably would have never passed it, but they joined forces with us. We had this big all round dance, and I think it scared the living bejesus out of the white people that were there in the council. So it was a good times, but yeah, we definitely can use the number, we can use the help, and definitely the allies. So it would be an honor.
Yeah, and someone mentioned like Redstone Arsenal. I'd love to be able to get together with some folks and go out there on the arsenal and try to do some organizing or talk to some of the Native Americans out there. I think that would be a very viable thing to do.
Yep.
A lot of folks don't know this, and certainly they don't teach it in elementary school, but during the Great Sioux Wars of the 1870s, one of maybe the only non-native group that had solidarity with Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse was the labor movement. there were a lot of editorials written in support because they recognized that the struggles with the federal government were very similar. Yeah. All right. Well, officially our time is up, but I'll hang around for as long as anybody wants to hang around. But if
Yeah, I had a question.
you're glad you came.
What's your question, brother?
Uh, I like to think of we can talk about different colors, but I like to think we're all pink on the inside. But how do you? I heard the expression used once, pretendians. How do you determine? How do you find each other, and how do you find out with all the interbreeding and things how native or who is considered a Native Americans? I mean, with the black people, it's like if there's one drop, you're black, you know, and how does that work with the Native Indigenous people?
Good question, Mike. Well, I don't want to step on Valerie's toes or Amy's or anybody's, Bailey's or anybody's right now, but I want to say from my perspective, I was adopted at birth, so technically I'm not a card-carrying Native. But in my network and my circle of friends, I've learned ceremony, and I've learned the ways, and I've made a mecca to New Mexico, to the Mescalero Reservation, and spoke to the people out there. And we are a maternal society. So essentially we have to show that our mother had lineage in our nation, and so far back, either on the rolls list or through a picture that somebody in the tribe recognized or whatever. That's just the Apache way that I was told. But from the people I know in Tennessee, you know, as long as you're respecting and walk the red path, and do things appropriately and not take things, you know, and do and say like you're, for example, somebody learns ceremony and then they're all of a sudden a medicine man and start doing stuff. That's totally inappropriate. Anybody who knows that would not even try that. But there are people who do, and or for example, who say they have been told that their great-great-great-great-grandmother was Cherokee, whatever, and then try to roll with that and then say all of a sudden, you know, I'm gonna create some kind of chapter here or whatever and try to put that off. And then there's the book, Killing the White Man's Indian. I just read that again for a second time, and it talks in depth about that struggle of, you know, dealing with that narrative we've just talked about and how people can hijack that and make it to where the lines are blurred, kind of like what social media is doing with facts, and where people don't know what ceremony is or what true ways are. You know, and people make jokes, you know, for example, when they're joking about a peace pipe, for example, you know, that's something that we don't do, at least like, not that I'm aware of, not that, you know, we might joke in some way of saying, hey, you know, whatever, but, you know, I know the Chulupe, and I know it's true history, and I know it's to be one of the most highest respected aspects of ceremony. And so for somebody to joke about it, you know, they're a pretendian. They're not really trying to be a real Native or know the ways. And then if they are in, like, for example, a social dance or some kind of aspect of, you know, a Native song or dance, and, you know, I don't know every song. I'm not going to profess it. But you know, to know the history of a certain song, like a jingle dance or, you know, men's warrior dance, or even, you know, women's cloth dance. Some of these things are passed on, and you're taught these little things, and you understand it, and you know that someone who's just playing a drum and not doing it respectfully, they're a pretendian. And so there's lots of things that we see, at least from the Native community I'm associated with, that we kind of can call out immediately and kind of say, yeah, this dude's not legit, or this person's not. And there are people. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Do they do it? Has anybody done any DNA testing or anything like that they can trace that sort of stuff? I mean, that's different than ideologies and people's way of thinking and stuff. But I mean, it's just genetics.
Okay, so I can weigh in on that. I've always known that I'm Native all my life. My grandmother pretty much raised me, my mom's mom, and she's, I mean, we've been colonized, you know, since the 1700s. So she comes from the Homa, Biloxi people. And so the Choctaw people. And so, you know, that always, you know, keeping that, we don't have like the Homa, never, like they lost their tradition, you know, some 300 plus years ago. So we're been colonized, and it's hard for us natives in the South to come back to those traditional ways because it's been non-existent in our, you know, lineage for so many decades and generations. So, but I've always known I was Native on my mom's side. Her dad's from South Texas. My dad and my dad's dad, he was very much Navajo Apache. I mean, you could just tell by looking at him. And then his spirit, he had a very strong aura about him. Like he was just, you know, my mom's probably rolling her eyes right now, but yeah. So, but he was very strong, and so I always knew, ever since I was a little girl, that I was different, and you know, my family coming from the Southwest as well, very different to those natives in the area. And so I knew I was Indian. I just wanted to know, know different cousins from different areas because I have cousins in California, New Mexico, all across everywhere. And that's pretty much why. But when I did my DNA, it connects you to communities of where you originate. And it was pretty much accurate on that because my dad's from Las Cruces, New Mexico. He was born in El Paso. His mom.
Hey, that's where I was born. Sorry, go ahead.
So his mom was from Pecos, Texas, which is not far from El Paso. So we're all, you know, we're cousins, so we're all in that area. And then in the South Texas part, it didn't really cover that part of my DNA. So it covered more of my paternal part. And then it came out as 48% Native, which is a lot of Native compared to the community that I'm from, that, you know, they're very proud they're Native, but their Native came back far back in their generations than mine. So it connects you to community. So it connected me to Zacatecas, Durango, Chihuahua, and then it connected me to Colorado, South Colorado, Northern New Mexico, and West Texas Indigenous. So.
Mike, I was gonna say, lately, you know, we people come up to us all the time, and that's what they'll say. My great grandmother's Cherokee Indian, and lately I've been falling back to what Cherokee is as Cherokee does, you know, because I feel like, you know, regardless of having a DNA test, which we all know is probably the biggest scam to get, you know, for these medical agencies, regardless of how that works, and especially here in the South, when I go to certain areas and I can see the Indigenous in them, and they'll tell me that, and I have to honor that, and I tell them, you know, while you're portraying that, I need you to get to know a little bit more about that tribe, you know, and I need you to stop saying stuff like, ooh, you know, do the feathers and this. I said, we don't do that. You know, it's a process of correcting them to not come off as, but to believe that they're Native American, you know. And so when somebody says it to me, then you are Native American until you prove, you know, you prove me otherwise, you know. We just have to honor it, because over here in Alabama, we still have a lot of people that are part Black and do have an Indigenous history. And, you know, they can't proclaim it. They know it's in their family, but along the way, it's just trying to educate them about these different tribes and, you know, different aspects of it. Of course, I'm not from you know, this area, so it's a little bit harder.
Well, that brings up another question. I understand you're from the Dakotas, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And Soda said he was just born in El Paso. He said he's Apache. I mean, and he's in Cookeville, Tennessee now. He's way off the reservation if he wanted to
My
use
God.
strange term there.
Correct that. This is a little far from home.
But anyway, so how do you? People are probably familiar with the farm in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, where all the hippies gathered together and formed a commune, and you have people like the Amish that colonize. I mean, there's Amish in Ohio and Indiana and Tennessee and Pennsylvania. They buy up land. It's like the Native Americans from a lot of the tribes east of the Mississippi have just disappeared. I mean, like I tried in one of the other classes I explained, I grew up in Western Ohio where the Shawnee and the Miamis were, and they're just gone. I'm just,
we're not gone. We're in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
We were pushed out in Oklahoma, but we're here.
Yeah.
We're coming off Oklahoma. We live in Nashville. We have a Choctaw Nation citizen is the 48th represented district of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, in State House of Government in Nashville. We're not gone. We're very much here.
but can you buy up land and get together and pull those kind of things together and make your own reservation, sort of say, or whatever? Can you? Is there an effort to do some of this work? What's
It
that?
does not work.
It doesn't
way.
work
So,
that way. You can't build
okay,
it.
That's why I'm
a
asking.
good example here is we've got a we call them the little cousins. I'm actually from the Choctaw Nation, and we were removed in 1828 under the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit, under the guise of Andrew Jackson said you can dissolve your people or you can move west. So my people decided to get the hell on out and move west because we're going to stay Choctaw. And Mississippi band said, heck no, we're staying by not Hawaii. So that's why they stayed in Mississippi. But they have a farm in Ripley, Tennessee, and they bought it in the 1950s. That's all it is. It's the farm. The Bureau of Indian Affairs has to get in the middle of all this. And this is why it is, to use a white man term, a godsend that Deb Holland got over the interior, because she is the first native in 197 freaking years to be over this chapter. So, I mean, it's a good thing. But even though the Mississippi band of Choctaw Indians were indigenous to Shelby County, Tennessee, Ripley, Tennessee, all they have is 60 acres in a community where they live on a farm in Tennessee. You can't just go and buy a whole bunch of land and, oh, it's a reservation. It does not work that way. There's so many federal laws with the treaties that prevent that. I mean, I've got a house. I bought my house. I live in this house on a 0.2 acres of land, but it's not a Choctaw reservation, even though a Choctaw owns it.
I didn't mean per se to say a reservation. I meant just to pull people together as a group and be able to.
That's a good question, Mike. And really, I think historically we have tried, AIM tried to take over Alcatraz. A lot of people forget about that.
Yeah.
And that was unwanted land, really, by the United States government. And so natives wanted to have it. And once we took it over, they just kind of sat us out. But there was nothing that ever materialized from it, because there was not a way to have resources, and no one was willing to boat food and things like that over to the prison island. But it was a statement, nonetheless, that we did try. But any kind of commerce that we try to make, any type of organizational aspects on those lands are always going to be monitored by the federal government and oppressed and kept us from being able to succeed. Because that's the problem, really.
That's the problem.
Yeah, if we have control over our own resources, we're able to establish our own we have a government, but if we're able to establish it to where we can have staying power and not infighting conflict amongst our stuff, because that's another part of it. You know, they put native against native. That way we could get what you're talking about. We could probably have more of a a basis for these communities, kind of like what the Black Panthers did in Chicago, you know, with these situations in certain neighborhoods where they policed their own neighborhoods and did their own, you know, breakfast organizations for the kids, you know. And AIM did try to do that. I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just saying on a bigger scale. It's something that I think if it was ever to come through, and it could be very successful. But here we are.
Well, I was thinking that like the idea with the commune, the farm there in Tennessee, from my understanding, that's pretty much fallen apart, and mostly from what you were talking about, internal strife, internal problems. And I was just thinking that something like the Indian movement, it would have more of a direction. But when you have, like I said, when you have outside forces,
yeah,
stirring up in division within an organization on purpose, I mean, we have that happening all over the United States in all kinds of organizations, not just
right.
The Red Power movement, but the Black Power movement, even within political parties. I mean, it's just, I mean, that's just a way for the 1% to pit people against each other. But
Well, Mike, unless you have a lot of support, you're going to get, even if you do get on land like that, you're going to be harassed when you come off the land, you know. And most likely,
Yeah,
you know, we did that in Chicago. We built up a little bit of an English Indian village, you know, on a plot of land, and they, you know, they were negotiating back and forth, and the federal government got involved, and you know, but every time someone would leave the land, they would get harassed or arrested, you know. So unless you really get some very powerful people on your side and try to, you know, actually change the government, you know, it most likely won't work, something like that. So,
You know, we have to work piece by piece. So, you know, just like we're doing with the mascot, but okay, so there's other places where I'm using my activism. Okay, so I have worked for a visitor and conventions bureau for a very small portion of time, and it had to do with them being racist. But in those places, they talk about they're trying to get people to come to your town, county, state, okay, Tennessee, Alabama, and they white or Louisiana, and they're only talking about Native Americans on the first line of the history of that town, county, or state. So our allies need to work on getting those places changed, just like we're trying to change, you know, the narrative for education, but also on those county websites, on those visitor websites, where they're saying, you know, the Native Americans were here, but so-and-so came and found this place. Those are also places that we need to communicate to and tell them, you know, you're forming the wrong narrative, because it's those places that they're trying to educate visitors and stuff to come to those towns that is stolen Native lands. And so those are one of the issues that I'm very passionate about, is talking to those visitor and convention bureaus, because that is like government ran. And also, like, you know, this county, the city, and getting those places to acknowledge Native Americans. So those are another form of our allies could help.
Troy, I had one other question here. Maybe this may not be so pertinent for tonight, but it was mentioned several times about Native Americans on Redstone Arsenal. I'm not familiar with that. Are there Native Americans? I don't understand that. I've never known anything about that.
I think, Amy, were you talking about that?
Yeah.
I don't know that much about it either.
Yeah, so Redstone Arsenal is an Army installation, and there is quite a diverse group of Native Americans who live down there, not just the Porch Creek. Fort Rucker is another one. Usually if you find a military installation, you're going to find Native Americans because we do it to get out of poverty. My option was to help my parents and to help try to better myself, but I was medically retired. So I went to do other things, but wherever you can find a military installation, especially east of the Mississippi, you're bound to find natives. We are 3% of the American populace, but I think Native Americans per capita make up the largest percentage of military enlisted that you're going to find, whether it's Army, Marines, Navy, Coast Guard, Airmen. We're there. You
So,
can say we have vested interest in it.
Is that a state recognized tribe down there? Because I think by Troy, New Brockton, they have Matchees, Lower Creek Indian Tribe, Star Clan of Muskogee Creeks, and Cherokees of Southeast Alabama.
Yeah, I know that there's some Onondagas that live down around Fort Rucker too. So there's quite a bit.
I think this is worth investigating. I think, you know, what's on the arsenal, and you know, I would think that might be worth investigating and organizing. You know, and I think Valerie, you're in Alabama, correct?
Yes.
Maybe that's something we could team up together and investigate, see what we could do.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, I do need to find them.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I want to give a shout out to Valerie and all her hard work to help connecting us with Native people. You know, we talked about that connectivity, and she's created this cool page with all these contacts in the Native community. And so I just want to give a shout out to her hard work for that, and it's helped. It's been beneficial in this fight against the people wanting to keep this mascot here in Putnam County. So I'm sorry I dropped off there for a minute. My connection is it's not as strong as I'd like to be out here. I want to be outside, you know, because it's nice weather finally. So I'm like, oh.
I thought you was put the fire out.
Yeah.
The fire about put my butt out, man. I tell you, it was getting hot. I'm Apache. I love heat, man. I tell you.
I have a quick question for Valerie.
Okay.
Do you know of any laws here in Alabama similar to what Amy was talking about, where, you know, if you have 4 Indians in the same place, you're allowed to shoot one? Is there anything like that we need to be focusing on with our state government?
I would think that if Alabama, Tennessee, and Mississippi and Georgia operate the same way, that they would probably have something similar. You know, anything that's involved with the removal or people being removed off of there, I think you would see a lot like that. But I know that Alabama had laws, I don't know if it's still on the books, but they had laws like they can't vote, they can't take a white man to court, you know, all this stuff that was going on in removal. That there were a bunch of laws that were set up. And I always tell everybody here that my understanding is, you know, the people that were here did everything they could to stay, you know, and they could not continue to face off with the state government and the federal government at the same time. You know, they created themselves, tried to make themselves look civilized like they wanted to. None of that was going to work until they removed them. You know, and up north, it was none of that was going to work until they killed us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lady in northern Alabama that looks a lot like my grandmother, but swear to God, she's white. Yeah.
It's funny. When I was at Loyola, I was doing a sociology class where I had to do an ethnic biography, and I talked to both of my grandmothers about like our ethnic composition, and they both said that they had Cherokee in their families, but couldn't say any more about it. And I kind of got from that, they're both from different parts of the country, so I wondered, you know, if they were just using the term Cherokee because they didn't know what tribe, you know, because whatever. You know, their heritage was it had been stolen from them, basically.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, that's it.
There's that. And then what I find all the time is that, you know, with the Creek, the Choctaw, the Cherokee, and Chickasaw, that the imagery is still plains, you know? So the imagery that's being racist is always plains, and it's insane, you know?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what
The stereotype as far as my people go, which I do descend from Choctaw Nation as well as Cherokee. We always get well, you don't look Indian because our people don't wear headdresses.
right.
We don't live in teepees. So, we live in chukas and we have turbans.
Right.
Hmm.
It's a big education gap.
Mm.
A lot of people on my reservation have curly hair.
I was a little late getting on. Valerie, is there a website that you have your information on?
I do. AlabamaIndigenousCoalition.org.
Making connections. I love it.
Every time somebody asks me about something, I'll be like, add on to
Alabama Indigenous, what was it again? Can you say that again? Alabama Indigenous
Coalition.org.
Okay.
Valerie, Valerie, how can we
Can I
support
ask-
you? Can we endorse your organization, and you endorse our organization or whatever, and work together? I mean,
Sure.
we'd be glad to.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
I think all of us that are trying to further education and truth, we all need to be in sync,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really important that you folks educate us, really educate us to whatever you need, your culture, that kind of stuff. And Troy has done an outstanding job, in teaching. Boy, we've been so fortunate to have him. And we, certainly look forward to working with you folks as much as we can.
Reggie, you got a question, Reggie?
Yeah, if y'all would indulge me for a second, I have a very Birmingham specific question for Valerie. Valerie, have you met a woman named Natalie Miller in Birmingham area?
I have not.
I don't really know her well, but I had a wonderful encounter and discussion with her at one of the craft shows that I was at. She is affiliated with the Cree Nation from Canada, but she lives here in the Birmingham area and sells wonderful silver and turquoise jewelry from the Southwest. She goes out and visits with the families that make the jewelry, and I guess buys from them and then distributes it at craft shows. Anyway, she seemed like somebody that it would be great for you to know in this area, because she definitely had a wonderful spirit. The other question I was going to ask you is, I've been working with something called the Birmingham Earth Coalition, which is an environmental justice organization, which is billing itself as being multiracial, multi-generational, but I feel like we're very much lacking any kind of strong Native American voice in what we're doing. There's one person in our group who does have Creek Indian heritage, but he primarily identifies as a Black man. And if you are interested in that kind of work or know anybody in this area that is, I would love to hear from them and see if they want to try to get involved in this group with us.
And what do you do with this Earth Coalition? Is this about?
Well, we formed at the end of 2019 with the intention of doing some extra actions. We started off calling ourselves Reclaim Earth Month, trying to get some enthusiasm back into the environmental movement. Well, and that all went out the window when COVID quarantine hit. We couldn't do any kind of actions or anything like that. So, but we have had some events online. There's a lot of work with agricultural, but there's a couple of land trusts here in town, and people from them are involved in this sustainable agriculture, particularly. So that's been the main thrust of what's actually got done, is things like creating a seed exchange and trying to encourage people to grow their own food. But we hope to, you know, we've had some involvement in other issues too, but I feel like we're lacking some wisdom that we really need in how we need to relate to our environment, to the earth, to nature.
Yeah, well, the reason I ask that is because, again, I'm from South Dakota, but some of those conversations I've been facilitating between people at the Muskogee Creek Nation in regards to land and, you know, lands, I think it's like landscaping, indigenous plant life that's, you know, no longer here, you know, the things about the soil. And they've been really helpful. We've facilitated that with, I think, Tuskegee, Auburn University, and UAB, I think, and try to make that connection to get somebody that is a little bit more familiar with what traditional foods are supposed to be here. And they actually they still do work here, you know. So, I mean, I would be happy to help you in any way I can.
Well, that definitely sounds like something that we need to know about. So maybe I can contact you through your website.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Great, thank you.
Did Cynthia have a question, or she? Oh,
I did want to touch on what Mike mentioned before, and you know, just to kind of, you know, I know there's a we as Native people, I've said this before, we did not create the race thing, and as that's always brought up to us, like, you know, well, how much Native do you have versus whatever. We didn't create that. We now have to use this as a ways of keeping culture and ceremony, because we've had so many people fall off and say, you know, they're this or that and the other. But ultimately, I want to boil that all down and say that, yes, we are all human beings, some more than others. And each tribe, their name, their nation's name really means the people. Ende means the people. Atne Hukwana means the principal people. You know, and if you boil down almost all the Lakota, you know, Valerie, you know,
scatter.
So it's uniformly for us, we view each other as people, not as a race. And so I think that's another thing that the Red Power movement tried to bring to the forefront, but always got pushed to the back because of one reason or the other. And when I speak to children at schools and I try to teach them about the Apache or the Inde, I ultimately tell them, you know, that we eat hamburgers, we wear blue jeans, we're just like you in some regards, you know, but what differentiates us is that we try to live with Mother Earth. So bringing that all together about, you know, Reggie's comment about getting, you know, more environmentally sound, you know, that's the one thing I also am proud about Native culture, is that we did try to live with the land more than the Europeans did, and didn't try to destroy it to where it wasn't usable if somebody moved from it. So that's the other part of it. And again, controlling our own resources and taking control of our ways of life again, or trying to hold on to it as much as we can. So
it's interesting. I read a discussion recently about someone in Kenya talking to someone here in the United States, and the person from Kenya corrected the person from the United States. He said, "You realize in Kenya there are no black people. The
Right.
concept doesn't exist over there. You know, the black people thing was something that the race thing we've made up in this country. It's not real. We need to get over that stuff. You know, it's just wrong. We're all humans, right?"
And it's not just go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, the previous presidential administration was doing things that seemed to be making moves toward legally establishing Native Americans as a separate race. As you brought out, and as Michael brought out, there's a great book by Nancy Shoemaker called How Indians Became Red, about how that pan-Indian identity for unity. But the thing is that if it gets boiled down to race, that's one step toward not recognizing them as nations.
Right.
Is really the most important thing.
Yeah. And all that, you know, as we celebrate each other's differences, there's still a common fold that we're all under. We're all proud to be Native. I would say, you know, I can't speak for, but I'm pretty confident that Amy's very proud of her culture, and so is Valerie and Bailey, you know, or anybody who can say that they know the traditional ways. And in that, saying that, you know, we celebrate our differences, but we still are unified in that we have to be now more so than ever. But I would say if we had a chance to have Geronimo back and Sitting Bull and all these other great leaders, that they would definitely have said, yeah, we're together on this. Even though there were slight differences and probably some conflicts between each nation, they would still probably say, yeah, we need we need to settle these quick. And that's happened in Standing Rock, excuse me. That happened. Another thing that wasn't reported, you know, 200 nations let down their differences. So.
Well, I like to say some very strong words that you never hear a lot of natives say when they have the platform. You know, we're just as old as, we're older than the Constitution, we're older than the Declaration of Independence, and we're still relevant today as we were those many years ago. And when the, you know, they're trying to say one nation under God and try to, be inclusive and say, oh, we're all created equal, we know that's not the case. And we know that they completely disregarded what was going on here and came on here and put this nation down. And, you know, we died for it, we was enslaved, we were so suppressed because of, you know, the white supremacy, the colonial mindset. And, you know, we're just like me and all our Native friends here, we're all, you know, a part of our ancestors. You know, we are still carrying on that baton to do the work that our ancestors, you know, did or didn't do, but we're still here. And that's what that also means. And that's why the Red Power is still what it is still today. And that's why we're still fighting, and we still need those allies because we're just as relevant. Just because United States and George Washington and Andrew Jackson and all these white men came here and try to lay down these rules on us, you know, they forget that we've always been here. You know, no matter what kind of game they want to play, no matter what kind of colonial mindset they're trying to throw on us and violations and, you know, put us in jail, lock us up, shut our mouths for, you know, we're still here. We're still here.
Yeah, when they want to colonize Mars and move the United States to the United States of Mars, my people are still going to be here. We're still going to have nations. We're here. You know, we came from this dirt. We're going to stay on this dirt. And so I look at it and going through genealogy charts and all the stories from the elders and whatnot, I consider myself extremely humbled and also extremely lucky per se, because my ancestors, last generation, not even 70 years ago, I've got a great aunt who we have no idea where she was buried because she died at a residential school. Before that, you had people who were marched, death marches, hundreds, thousands of miles in the middle of winter. They survived it. You have the great massacres from all the denominations of Christian churches and Christian love, because we don't understand your beliefs, so clearly you are a Satanist and we're going to kill you. From that, there was slavery. And so to be born Native, you kind of have to be born an activist in this generation. And it's amazing, but we still have to work. You know, you kind of have a warrior mindset, but at the same time, a true warrior is going to look at all the people and all the resources and say what works best, what brings us together, and not just fight, fight, fight all the time. Not hot-headed, kind of sit back and think about it. But it just, we will be here. When the planet is completely destroyed, we will still be here. And if we can change that and make it a little bit better, I know I can go on to the spirit world knowing my plate's clean. I did what I could. So
I think that when I saw what Trump was doing or trying to do, you know, I thought about it in the manner of, you know, that we are not a race, we are a political entity. And their job is to make us stop thinking that we are a political entity, because that is our power. And I was listening to the Thrive podcast, and he was talking about, we are the ancestors now, you know, where, you know, Crazy Horse is gone, Sitting Bull's gone, Geronimo's gone, you know, people have to step up to the plate. And if you're an Indigenous person, it is your responsibility to come to the table and try to make headway, because you're in the most unique position than almost anybody in the, you know, almost, you know, in the smallest minority, you have to make waves, you know. And so I think for that, it's difficult and it's heavy. And I think that in the end, it's just it'll be worth it.
That's a good segue to me inviting everybody, if when the time comes. And you know, as Valerie and everybody's mentioned, I've been working to help get this mascot changed in Putnam County. For those who can, I want to invite you, when I give the date, to make a trip to Putnam County. I plan on having a physical demonstration to show the people here in this community that natives are still here, and that we regardless of where we're from, we still don't agree with it, no matter what they say, how. And that's, you know, to Valerie's point, because there's not many natives in this area, they think, well, yeah, we can do this, what we want. And I'm going to make sure that they see a physical presence of natives and our allies. It doesn't have to be just Native Americans. I think that's the other point that gets missed with these demonstrations, that I recognize with the Black Lives Matter movement. And my father, who was African American, was who adopted me, was even shocked, because he lived through the 60s and saw, you know, the struggles of the civil rights movement. And then to see this many young people involved with the Black Lives Matter, that's all it's going to take. You know, I think also with these movements, physical presence, showing demonstration in a peaceful manner, and getting our voice heard, showing what Valerie said, that political entity, so they know that, hey, our vote matters, that our tax dollars matter, that we are a viable force. And so as I get closer to warmer weather, as I can, if you guys wouldn't mind, honor me and be here when that time comes, as we try to march onto the Putnam County School Board.
Hey, hi, can you try to make sure you keep us informed about that? You would be a good channel for information there.
Yeah, I will. And Troy can too. Troy is a new member of our board, so he will definitely be working on that too. So
thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been keeping this on the down low because you know, this town's small and I don't want to lay out my cards. And I've been, you know, Valerie's kind of helped me with that tactic too. You know, you don't want to be transparent and let them know, but that's kind of what I'm working towards, because I've had my interviews and on TV and stuff, and I've kind of put the shame on them right now. And they keep asking me, well, what's the next move? I'm not telling you. Did Geronimo tell you guys what he was going to do? No. So either way, you know, between our group here, you know, just be on the ready. And then when that time comes, I would be honored for each and every one of you guys to stand with us, and as we march. And you know, even if AIM, you know, Amy, if you can get AIM involved in that part, or Valerie, whoever, you know, just in a way that we have that physical presence, that way they know.
I was telling Sayota, I think yesterday, that our state senator, who is extremely conservative, but I've worked with on some labor things. Actually, you know how the small towns are. We went to elementary school together, but the things I've been posting about the cowardice of the education board and the county government in Putnam County that I've been posting on Facebook, he's been liking, as well as
Wow.
things that I've like, things like the stimulus money. That's how much of it is going toward Native Americans. So to me, that demonstrates that, there are even very conservative people who, once they see how Sayota is being treated, once they see how much this is being blown up over something that ultimately shouldn't matter, they're getting tired of it, and they're getting embarrassed by it, and they're going to put pressure.
Yeah.
Exactly what we were looking for.
Yep.
Great.
I'm so proud of you for doing that interview, Zelda. I know how much you hate the spotlight. It was good.
Yeah, man, I was like, ah, but I felt like
The smoke coming out his ears.
Felt the heat.
there's a time and place, and I felt like enough's enough when they're attacking my house and running over my mailbox and doing things like this, and when I get accosted almost at a school for trying to use the bathroom when I coach the baseball team, and and those things add up, and to me it's like a consequential thing from that board's decision. It's like, oh yeah, okay, now we can just do whatever we want, and I'm like, no. But they're going to try, and they're going to, you have to stand up against the bullies, and like anybody who's been on the playground and seen a bully, you got to sometimes smack them in the face and wake them up.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So Yoda, have you met with Jim Cravens? What's his name? Jim Cravens, the superintendent after Kim. Sorry,
Kim
Kim.
Cravens.
Have you met with?
She is the Allgood representative, and Corby King, yes, I have met with him prior to all this. I met with him with Yulia Gruber and Tom Savage and his other NAACP member, Ruth. And in that meeting, we discussed, all the pros and cons about what could have happened. And to our surprise, he even sided with us on this, saying, and I quote, that the Allgood people are mean and uneducated, that we have to, here's where he tried to tell us how we should approach it, as we've been disgruntled about how we should have to tell people how we feel. He told us that we need to just really kind of just be easy about it and not be so overt in their face about it that they would take it the wrong way. And so that's what we were met with. And yes, I did meet with these people, and I gave a presentation to them about why, as a parent, a Native American parent, that I thought it was wrong. And I showed them the Change the Mascot video that was aired during the Super Bowl, which I thought was perfect, and then I spoke on the fact that if this was allowed, how much further would this go, with other things? And they all approached me after the meeting and after my presentation and said, oh, we can't wait to talk with you, and we're going to do this committee, and we promise you we'll do something. But Turning Point USA and the NAGA entity supposedly have been, working their wheels behind the scenes. A specific individual named Andrew Donadio, who is a professor at Tennessee Tech, who is a part of Turning Point USA, I consider a terrorist organization, has been trying to manipulate and intimidate the school board. And when I confronted Kim Cravens after the school board vote, I stood out in the vestibule with my kids so they could walk past us and see us as human beings. And Kim Cravens, realizing what she did, tried to save face. And when she approached me, she said, Mr. Knight, I want to thank you. I said, no, hold on. I don't want your thanks. I want you to look my children in the face and their eyes and apologize to them for continuing these racist tactics that continue. you're gonna cause them problems emotionally, spiritually, physically, and economically, and otherwise. And she didn't like that too much, obviously. So I have talked to him, Bailey. I have spoken to him until I'm blue in the face. And these people, they don't want to change. And that's what I said in one of my interviews. This town is not only slow to change, they do not want to change. Although it's the only thing constant is change, you know, and it's only the change that they want. You know, they're fine with the Indian Removal Act. You know, you see, they're fine with destroying farmlands and displacing poor white people. They don't care about that. They don't care if our kids are educated or not, as long as theirs are. So when I threw the proverbial rock into the group of dogs, and you know, they say when you hit the dog that barks, you hit, you know, you struck the chord. I said, well, you're just afraid of what happened on January 6th on the Capitol. And she got mad instantly. No, you're making this political, blah. I was like, no, it's been political. You see, you just don't want to admit it, that you're afraid of these people that are Trump supporters and terrorists. And I turned away and said, you know, I looked at Corby and I said, I don't appreciate a thing you did today, but thank you. Like Kim Cravens wanted to do to me, thank you, you know, but thank you. And I just walked out because I told her she's unleashed the bullies on us.
Did you
And
say
she
bless
did.
your heart? Did you say bless your heart?
I almost did, but I was like, that's too quick now, you know. I was like,
No, he never emailed this guy, this professor at Tennessee Tech.
have I emailed him?
Yeah, like
No.
He was sitting behind Yulia and Sayota heckling, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Well, he was doing it in a covert, borderline legal way. Like, what I mean is, whenever they announced that they were not going to have the committee, he was like, "Yeah, all right." And he looked over at me, and I was like, "Really? Like, that's what gets you applause?" And
He's
so,
also the associate vice chair of the Republican Party for the county.
right.
Oh Lord.
So it's all connected, and that's what I'm trying to do also in my abilities to connect them and to show people like Representative Bailey. But these are the people that he is with. And when the person who's on an educational institution is actually promoting discriminatory things, it calls into question or begs the question, like, what are you really doing? Are you really like, what's going on here? And I don't want to reach out to him right now because of situation with Yulia, which I'm not at liberty to talk much more about, but there's a lot of craziness going on with him and the university right now. So
He's been causing a lot of trouble across the board in a lot of ways.
yeah, so I'm gonna steer clear of him. I don't have to do anything with him. I'm not trying to reach across the aisle with him because he doesn't have a conscience, and you can't change people who don't have a conscience. I think the Black Power movement, the Black Panthers, they all met that with, you know, the police that didn't have a conscience, which we still have today. They don't have a conscience. And Malcolm X even said it to a Black activist who was trying to be a pacifist. She laid down her life in front of a bulldozer, and Malcolm was watching, and she said, you know, why won't you join us? He's like, are you crazy? He goes, all it would take is this man in the bulldozer is to accidentally hit the gas pedal and run over you and kill you. And what did you die for? And so this person he was trying to tell her is that these people have no conscience. They don't care. They just don't. Like the guy who ran over my mailbox. I had to tell the cop. He was like, well, why would I run over your mailbox? I have a car. I was like, this, obviously, they don't have a conscience. They don't care what happens to the car. They're trying to intimidate me. And so that's what we're dealing with. Person with a conscience.
Being raised in the upper Cumberland of Tennessee, which is where Cookeville is, I grew up, my tobacco farm's like a county over. Until and I hate using the term marginalized, but for lack of a better term, community or person of that representation is seen anything more than a magic pixie unicorn, they're not going to do anything. You've got to figure out a way to spin it. So with for example, the mascot situation, if you can figure out a way to say, you said your grandmother was a full-blood Cherokee princess, right?
Yeah.
So this means this mascot's you, because you're one of us. you got to get people on that same level. As far as representatives of state of Tennessee, Brian Terry, and I sent you the message about it, he is a 48th district for Las Casas in Murfreesboro. He is a citizen of the Choctaw Nation. And so he sees himself on the same level as Brian Terry, but you guys over here are saying Brian Terry's our mascot. You got to just kind of equally put things on the same level. And they finally maybe take the blinders off. But until you can get it to the point of relevancy, that mind is shut like a steel door.
The Sayota has made the point, and it's a good one. That it starts costing them money.
Mhm.
And with exposure, we were on the Sayota, well, Yulia was on a few weeks ago, the same on Fox News, even like Sayota was. So that's the whole Middle Tennessee sees that. Sayota had that article in the Nashville newspaper. That's attracting attention to the county, and that county wants to attract new businesses. You know, so enough shame. It's not going to shame the Andro Donatios, and it's not going to shame the rednecks, but it's going to shame the people that are greasing the wheels that want to make the money, and they'll start leaning on those people.
Mm-hmm. And I saw Sonic and McDonald's were on their supporter list. So that might be worthwhile to send a letter to them while these companies are trying to get right, you know.
Yeah, they have on their website like a place that says donators or contributors or something. And then
Contributors.
a list of them, of their logos.
I think a letter from the Tennessee Indigenous Coalition to McDonald's.
You need a logo.
Yeah.
I'm a graphic designer by trade.
See there. See how it works. If you put it out there.
Grant writer.
Best darn racist in the whole wide world. Oh no, that's a Burger King. I'm sorry. I know I said that I would stay till the cows come home, but I think my cows are at the gate. So
Yeah, I think I hear
go.
them.
But yeah, I mean,
About to go to.
Tom is the man in charge here. So, but I'm going to have to bow out.
Well, we probably went over time, but it's probably good because I had to go searching for a better internet about 20, 30 minutes in, and we may have lost.